The following podcast contains opinion and commentary protected by the First Amendment and fair use. It may also contain adult themes, adult concepts, and adult language not suitable for children. Viewer discretion is advised.
Femme Fetal, she is a con and not your pal. She'll have you by the balls when the pregnancy calls. She's the Femme Fetal. Laura Owens goose is cooked for arraignment. You'll be booked. Mugshot taken, finger scan, bond is set. Now that's the plan. In a court when she will sit. Felony charges aren't your shit. Rachel Mitchell has your name. You have no one else to blame. The die is cast, pregnancy fakers just won't last. Forging tests and faking docs, soon she'll be wearing prison crocs. You've got nowhere else to hide, justice this time will be denied. No appeal will save your ass, you've got no tissue left to pass. The game is set, the die is cast, pregnancy fakers just won't last. Forging tests and faking docs, so she'll be wearing prison crocs. You've got nowhere else to hide. Justice this time won't be denied. No appeal will save your ass. You've got no tissue left to pass. Justice for Clayton, Mike and Greg, and other than that she's misled. Protection orders gotta go from the moon, but where he home.
Welcome everyone back to your favorite cubbyhole on the internet. And also, welcome new subscribers to this channel. We hope you find this cubbyhole comfortable enough to make it your favorite cubbyhole on the internet as well. And today we continue. We continue on our deeper dives into the Owens dynamics, the family systems that created the crazy wench we know as one indicted felon, Laura Michelle Owens. We're looking as much as the internet allows because, strangely enough, for a family whose parents were famed in media, allegedly, I'm not sure I buy that all of them were famed in media anymore, but we know that they were very involved in media and broadcasting. In spite of all of that, there isn't much. There is not a whole lot to dig up about them and their family life. We see very carefully curated appearances and other things, but even with those, even with what little we have, we can glean just a little bit more. Laura was very ambitious. She still is. She's ambitious, trying to save her ass from the criminal justice system. Oh, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing that a little digging, we've found some interesting things. Others have beat us to the punch a little bit in some regards. They've put some of this information out there, but they haven't really talked much about it. And as far as I'm aware, the big players in discussing Laura Owens since the beginning haven't necessarily covered all of this as well. Many of them who were caught up in the day-to-day as the case was unfolding up to the trial, they got kind of caught in the information as it landed, the emails, the texts, the back and forth from attorneys, the mudslinging from Dingus, the douche canoe.
The fucking douche canoe.
Sometimes it's difficult to see the forest from the trees, and some people just don't want to dig so far down as to figure it out. And that's okay. I think everyone's got a voice in this, and I absolutely love everyone who's talked about this thus far. And the major players, I'm always going to enjoy them and certainly will always appreciate anything they come up with and anything they talk about as well. So I'm not here to cast any stones, not at all. I know I've had some people make some comments saying, oh, you should just let Megan and Dave and Tug do all the talking and we don't really need people like you. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion too, but I don't agree with it. Because who? Who is talking about the problems with Mother Owens? I believe she has some. And I believe we can go in the Wayback Machine, as it were, and see evidence of those problems. I think these are things that are being concealed by the family. We don't want to besmirch that squeaky clean Owens image of famed broadcasters and very successful children. That would just ruin the American dream for everybody if anyone were to realize they have their flaws too, just like other Hollywood California types. The Owenses are no different. They have their issues. They've tried desperately, I think, to hide them from public view because, well, when you lose trust in your listening audience, be you Ronn Owens, Mama Owens, or any of the daughters, you lose a little bit of equity in your brand when you've built yourself as being a trusted, comforting voice, as many opined and stated on the what we believe is a griftathon, calling it to help cover Ronn Owens' medical expenses. We believe it's our right and entitlement under the First Amendment to believe that it's not as transparent as they are leading people on to believe. We believe some of those funds will be used to defend Laura, and until they show us the receipts, we're allowed to believe that. And even if they do show us receipts, if they can't be verified, and if they're manufactured by their daughter Laura Michelle Owens, who is indicted for fraud on 7 felony counts, we can only take certain things with a grain of salt from them. But that's all right. We aren't here to discuss the GoFundMe that, while it hasn't evidently made much money in the last week or so, they've raised a good $120,000, pleading on people's sympathies and pities to Ronn's medical plights. God bless the people who gave money. I don't think that it was a GoFundMe launched in good faith, but again, that's my opinion. But we are here. We are to dig further. And the thing that got me going on this was watching the interactions during the body cam footage. I've got 2 episodes of that. You're welcome to go back and take a look at those. They are the 2 instances provided by Schnitzel Ninja, the amazing and wonderful, who also made a drop of a slightly dramatic reading of the extortion and coercion emails from Laura to Clayton just earlier today. But we took a look at those videos. We found a little bit more, and it got me to thinking even further, as such review tends to do. There's more here than meets the eye. And this is not a dig at anybody who I find fascinating, but it doesn't take a psychic to figure that out, if one is observant. And in our society, we tend to let a lot of things roll by that could give us clues into what is really going on. We all have the capacity to observe, and when we are a little more practiced in it, we can read between the lines and we can use our own innate intuitive senses to see things based upon not only our experiences and a little bit of education, perhaps. We can look deeper into the dynamics and family relationships that we see within the Owens family and come up with a clearer picture of what it was that happened throughout this family's existence that created someone like Laura, who is now indicted on 7 felony counts of various forms of fraud, perjury, and tampering with evidence, and perhaps among other things, but we'll see in time. So I have been digging quite a ways into the internet as far as my little fingers could get into, and we found a number of different interviews that either Laura, Mother Owens, or a combination of the two, and even some other things produced by them on the Nobody Told Me podcast, featuring other members of the family, Ronn and Sister Sarah, we can learn a little bit more. We can gain some more insight into the family dynamics, the family relationships, and also the interactions that formed and shaped these people into who they are now and what we see today. We have found an interview with Mother Owens and Laura Owens. On Jordan Belfort's channel, the Wolf of Wall Street himself brought them in to talk about their podcast. Now, it's unclear if this interview was solicited by Jordan Belfort or if it was a PR attempt by Laura and or Mama Owens to get themselves out there more. But in this hour and some odd minute interview, there's a lot of interactions. There's a lot of interactions that intrigue me. And one of the things that caught me watching the Scottsdale police body cam footage, both of those interactions, was the relationship between Mother Owens and Laura and how they seemed to feed on each other. And it became rather apparent to me just in those before I started doing more digging that there is a certain closeness between mother and daughter. And it would seem to me, based on my observations, that Laura is Mother's favorite. And I think, given the fact that Mother said rather clearly in those videos that she's very well aware of the things that were going on in this particular case with Clayton Echard, there's more to it there. What I wanted to do was further examine that relationship as well as the other family relationships. So we get some good bits here. And as I was watching this particular footage on the Wolf of Wall Street's channel, I noticed behavior that caught me very briefly watching the body cam footage of Mother Owens, and seeing even more repeated behavior got me to thinking, and based on a little bit of education that I do have and a bit of research that anybody can do, I think Mother Owens is hiding a significant mental health secret. Now, I don't think it's near the secret that Ronn Owens has been hiding all these years, and Laura alludes to and talks about to some degree in this interview. So in this interview, we learned some more family history, some things that Mother Owens shares that she hadn't shared publicly before about her early life, and some other things about her entry into broadcasting. Again, not all of which I believe, because there's really nothing to substantiate it other than her say-so. And my continued belief about the women of the Owens family, at least these particular two. There isn't much that can be trusted without any verification and without verifiable facts. With that said, I think Sister Sarah has her own tale to tell. We may take a look at other things that involve Sister Sarah, Mom, and Laura, and other podcasts that are still available out there, and we may take a look at how those interactions may inform their relationships as well. Before I get too much further into this, I will again preface that I'm not a healthcare worker of any kind. I am not a mental health expert, neither am I a legal scholar or practicing attorney. I don't work in any of those fields, thank God, because dealing with people like this, should and when they cross your path, would drive me absolutely batty, and I would want to get out of the industry altogether. It would not be good to one's health to have to deal with people like this, but when you work in those kinds of fields, you kind of have to. It's just the way it is. So let's take a look at this particular interview between Mother Owens, Laura Owens, and Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. And I'm going to lay this out here. I'm going to put all my cards on the table, which normally I don't like to do right up front, but I want to see what other people think about this, because I think this is absolutely fascinating. One of the things I think Mother Owens is hiding is that she too has some debilitative and degenerative issues. And I think they've been very careful to hide that fact. Now, why, I don't know, other than this is a family that wants to curate what the public thinks about them. And that probably relates to Ronn's career. He had a very long, successful career in radio. He was the golden goose of KGO radio in San Francisco for over 4 decades, if I'm not mistaken by my math, even when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's some 24 years ago. It is my belief, based upon the actions that I see in between all the clips here, and there's a lot of Jordan Belfort talking about himself, which is a little bit of a pity, but perhaps not surprising given his history. I want to keep the focus of this on mother and daughter. I noticed in all of this footage in a first edit I did, which unfortunately I ruined and wasn't able to save. So we're going to have to raw dog this just a little bit, and I will have to edit everything in post to kind of make some concise presentation out of it. But I noticed in this footage, as I did with the body cam footage, that Mother Owens exhibits some traits that I believe suggest she may have dementia. Now, for those of you who don't know, and those of you who haven't done any research or have no experience in this sort of thing, again, I'm not saying this as a healthcare professional, nor am I intentionally remote diagnosing as such or such things. We are just making observations. We are simply using our innate powers of observation and doing a little research to try and find out what these things might mean based upon what we see. And again, for those of you who have not experienced dealing with a family member or a close person in your life that may experience cognitive decline, that can manifest itself in a number of ways. One of those ways is physical. You can have mobility issues, you can have other physical issues, even including things like less voluntary mouth and jaw movements. And that can be exhibited by things such as the mouth hanging open when one is not speaking. It's actually an unconscious action. Another part of that can also be things like chewing and other mandible motions of the jaw, interactions within the face and the mouth, seemingly unconsciously. And we see this a lot. I saw Mother Owens in the body cam footage. Her mouth was just sort of hanging open when she wasn't speaking. That caught my attention briefly, and it wasn't until I started seeing other footage that goes back a few more years where I saw even more, where Jan Black, Elizabeth Naylor, Mother Owens as we call her mouth was simply hanging open, or she was chewing. Just absolutely nothing. Her mouth was moving and just sort of chewing motions, and I went, aha, have we discovered something here? I believe I have. So as we go through this footage, keep an eye on her. Keep an eye on what she is doing, her facial expressions, how she engages. Now, you would think, just based upon how she responds and how she interacts, that she's absolutely perfectly fine. But you need to watch the other things. You need to watch the other things because those are the tells. Those are the things that give us the insight of what more is happening. So we have to get beyond the obvious. And the obvious stuff here is also very interesting. The family stories of Ronn Owens' issues with depression that run on that side of the family, which I'm quite convinced genetically Laura has picked up a little bit and then some. And then we learn some other things. It's very fascinating watching, and this is just one interview that I want to cover. I've got a few others saved here that I hope to work on in due time, where we learn some other interactions, as I have mentioned before. The family dynamics tell us everything. They're important in realizing how Laura came to be and how she ended up being the woman that she is today and how she has ended up facing 7 felony counts from Maricopa County Attorney's Office. It's easy to say that she's just a nasty person that's got some issues. That's the easy way out. But the solution to figuring some of these things out and how one can work with that, origin stories are interesting. They're interesting to me. I think they tend to be interesting to other people because behaviors such as faking a pregnancy and coercing men into relationships by faking pregnancies, and when they don't go along with it, try to keep them silent with the court system, is bizarre. It's unusual. It's unpredictable. And it tends to be very, very manipulative. My own family history with manipulative people goes to step siblings who have bipolar issues, and along with that, in order to get their way as part of their disease and their disorder, was to manipulate, coerce, and do other rather inflammatory and coercive actions. So I actually have a little bit of personal experience to this, and that may be one of the reasons that I find some of this fascinating is to deal with my own trauma. And that's okay. I think we can all gather for a little trauma bonding, and we can all pick apart a very public family who's trying to hide some of their secrets from the public to keep their own brand and to keep their own equity in that brand. But it's too late. Laura has ruined that for them. And as I said at the end of my last episode, there's going to have to be some tough choices. They either save Laura at the expense of the family or vice versa. They save the family at the expense of Laura. I think it's a dichotomy they cannot escape. And unfortunately, some of the members of that family, like Sarah, are going to have to make some tough choices. We'll talk more about her in a future episode. So let's get right into this interview with Jordan Belfort, Mother Owens, Jan Black, Elizabeth Naylor, and indicted felon Laura Michelle Owens.
Hey, JB in the house. The Wolf is here for the Wolf's Den, another great podcast. This is a special one. I have a double teamed here. Okay, mom and daughter combination here. I got a legend. I got Jen Black, who's been, I just found out she's like been in either TV or radio since she's like was in diapers. Not 4 years old, right?
Oh, yeah.
4 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, so
New information. Mother says she started when she was 4 years old. She'll tell more. And yes, I know. For those of you who hate me interrupting, you're going to hate this a lot. So if you want to go back and watch this without me chiming in every so often, as I'm wont to do, because for two reasons, that helps us with fair use issues. And the whole point of this is to point some things out as we go along. I'm not going to remember everything by sitting through an hour-plus interview and then chiming in, and I don't want to get smacked around with people wanting to be vindictive, saying, well, you can't just play it. You need to do something to it so that it's fair use. So this is why we interrupt. This is why we talk about things. This is why we do things the way we do. And I fully recognize that isn't everyone's cup of tea. That's okay. I'm glad you join us for what you do, and if you want to look elsewhere for the same information, you're more than welcome to. For those of you who caught some of my earlier work, we talked a little bit about Mother Owens, and I didn't dig as far as I could have with her. At the time, I talked about some of those things. Her published bio, as it were, kind of presents itself from the Nobody Told Me podcast. And it claims that she was involved in broadcasting in her youth. She mostly speaks in published things about her past, about being in radio as a teenager and then going to San Francisco. Not once in any of the things I've discovered does she talk about being on TV. And she'll tell us right now.
out of diapers, I think, right?
Yeah.
I hope so, right?
Yes.
If he wasn't, we have issues, right? And then we have our daughter Laura Owens, who's also awesome. They have a podcast they do together. It's got really 4.9 stars. It was really popular. It was the #1 self-help podcast.
Now, were all of those stars legally gotten, or were they had by bots? I don't know. It's not an accusation, but I wonder because it's the traffic and the subject matter is rather esoteric. It's sort of a weird, it's a weird woo-woo sort of thing where Laura's tried to fashion it into, I do this because it helps me personally. And she's going to talk about that, I think, a little bit in this interview. But some of the subject matter is just a little bit off the beaten path, and they try and glean from it. And it's really just sort of a variety show with mother and daughter, but yeah, I find it bizarre. The intents of it are just a little too woo-woo for me. All of this sort of new agey, you can make yourself better by listening to all these gurus and other things. I mean, it's just, I don't know. Yes, we can all learn things from other people, but it has to be more than a passive activity. To improve yourself, this is why therapists have you engage in certain things and in certain ways when you're trying to actually progress as a human being. All right.
For many weeks, and is it still, or it's been off and on?
It has been off and on.
Yeah,
It's off and on.
it's
The start of
very
it
very
last year.
popular, and they're really awesome. And I think for them, it's mostly a labor of love. It's something that's really authentic for them. And it's not like, I'm sure they do well with it financially, but it wasn't about that. It's more about they do it because they love doing it, and great story to tell. And I also want you to know that anytime you want to ask me any questions, 'cause I know you guys do interviews, so don't think it's just a one way. I want to have a dialogue with you guys, and
Perfect.
nothing's off limits both ways, right?
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
He can't help but talk about himself a lot. And fair warning, I'm editing the hell out of this after the fact because he rambles on incessantly about his issues and his things. And, it's his show. He can do whatever the hell he wants. But it's not germane to what we're after. We're interested in watching these two ladies right here and how they react and the things they do when they're not talking with each other or with him.
So I want to start by saying, okay, what were you doing at 4 years old? That's number one.
Okay. So at 4 years,
I want to ask you what year it was in.
the year would have been 1960.
Okay,
The year was
okay,
1960.
all right.
Okay. And I watched a local kids TV show in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
She doesn't say what show. Does anyone have any guesses? Did it even exist? We are asking questions at this point.
Where I grew up,
Right.
begged my mother, could I be on the show? Could I be on the show? Because they had an announcement saying we need more kids for the show. So my mother said, yeah, okay. And drove me down for an audition, and I got on the show. And so I was on it for, I don't know, a few months or so, and then the show went off the air.
Right.
But
So what did you do on the show though? Like, what
it was just a kids show with like 6 kids doing different things.
do you remember when we were growing up?
So vague. So vague for a momentous occasion, a big entry into being a star on TV. But we don't name the show. We don't even really remember what it is. We have no specifics. There's no pictures. I would think any parent who's normal might have some photographs of their kid being a star for the first time in their life. But we've got nothing. We've got nothing. We've got no station. We've got no name of the show. We've got nothing to work with other than this is where she says things began. Take it or leave it. I'm preferring to leave it because I don't quite believe it, quite frankly.
I mean, we grew up in a different world. I'm close to your age, right? So
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was such a big thing. But yeah, I got the bug then, and then just really wanted to be in TV and radio, and got back into it in a serious way when I was a teenager, when there was a real pull, a real push for women in broadcasting in the 70s, because there weren't many, and there was a real push to get women hired in broadcasting. So,
And while she's not wrong, there was, of course, in the 70s to try and open up equality in the workforce in a multitude of ways. Having done a little snooping around with people who do work in broadcasting and had worked in broadcasting in that period of time, their inferences to me were that it would have been unusual for a young lady fresh out of high school to have instantly been thrust on the air. Even if, as Jan Black, Mother Owens, has posted in her bio or her publicly released material, that she was a DJ during high school, which also is a little bit suspect because, again, she leaves no details. She gives us nothing to work with on what station that could have been in Albuquerque where she grew up, or exactly what she did as a DJ, what kind of station it was, did it play music, what was it? The details that would have left a lasting impression in a young child's mind of such an auspicious beginning are lacking greatly. But we'll let her continue her story. I just don't buy into all of it. And again, when she's not speaking, pay attention to her involuntary mouth and jaw movements.
oh, I thought, well, let me try it again.
And where
so
were you
I
living
did-
back then?
Again, it was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So it was a smaller market. And I think in a lot of ways it was easier to break in because it wasn't New York. It wasn't Los Angeles. It was a smaller market and you could make mistakes,
Right.
You could make your mistakes in small towns. And so that was it. And got into radio and TV there.
Moved to San Francisco.
Moved to San Francisco.
Well, right. So now then you came into the picture, right? So tell me the
Fast
story
forward a
now,
little
right?
bit.
Yeah. So now you
And it's funny that Laura doesn't light up until she's the one being talked about. That continually impresses me throughout this entire interview and this interaction. And there's many times where while she's looking in the direction of whoever's speaking, the lights are on, but nobody's home.
you guys, so you grew up in San Francisco, right?
Yes, born and raised in San Francisco.
Oh, God. And her Valley Girl, California, like, oh my God, I'm born and raised in San Francisco. It drives me up the wall. The Valley Girl thing drives me crazy. And I know it's not as bad up to the north in San Fran as it is down in LA, but it still drives me batty. It's too much. It's the old affectation that, was a stereotype, I think more in the 90s, but Laura still has it. And it grates on me. But notice she's not as much of a vocal fry person at this point in time. This is only about 5 years ago. So even the vocal changes, the change in her voice in the space of about 5 years suggests some things to me. As someone who knows a little bit about how vocal production happens, I'm not going to say too much more than that. But I have alluded to some of the problems that I think are unsaid about Laura and her appearance, which will also have effects on her voice.
My parents met in radio. So my dad has been on the radio for 40 some years.
So what does he do?
in San
What does he do? Is on the his own talk show?
He has a talk show. He's now doing a briefer news commentary, because my dad's in his 70s now, so he still wants to be on the air, but he also wants to kind of retire. So I would say he's semi-retired at this
Right,
point.
and he has Parkinson's disease. He's had
Yes.
Parkinson's for 18 years, and so he kind of wanted to pull back from the daily talk show. But he's on the air every day doing a segment,
How's he-
commentary.
I think the treatments have gotten much more effective, right? So I think the prognosis used to be much worse than it is now,
Oh
right?
yeah, and he's had deep brain stimulation surgery, which is real cutting edge.
Michael J. Fox had that, right? Yeah, I remember. So
It's amazing what it can do. I mean, he's functioning. He's
Yeah, and
There's a lot of sort of hedging a little bit on his functionality. But yes, such surgeries do exist. I have done some research on that, and they can do interesting things. The level of which I think is a little bit exaggerated here. Maybe Laura's about to say that, but it's very expensive. It's a very expensive surgery, and it's a difficult one to maintain for long amounts of time because it involves brain implants and other very expensive electronic devices to stimulate the brain and kind of negate the effects of Parkinson's. But evidently he did have it, and I wouldn't be surprised if they ran out of the family fortune of all of his supposed millions of dollars just dealing with some of his medical issues. Now that some things like this, that he had very specialized, specific, and very expensive brain surgery and implants installed to try and keep him and KGO Radio profitable was the hope. So they paid him a lot of money, and he goes into doing some very expensive surgery, which in 2001 was fairly cutting edge. It's almost risky kind of cutting edge, but if you've got money to do that kind of thing and take the risk, you can buy some time. But that time can come at a cost later when things degenerate further between neurological interactions. I'm just going to keep interrupting as I so desire. Forgive me. Those of you who can't stand me interrupting, that'll be the way it is. That's okay. I've got lots to say throughout this thing, and we'll trim it. We'll trim it as we need to later.
living a
every
normal
day.
life.
Yeah, I mean, he
Pretty
really
awesome.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
he is. But I think I
It's
got
like the glial cells or something they stimulate, right, in the certain part of the brain. It's pretty amazing, the
Right.
things they do.
It is. It's absolutely amazing.
and they can adjust it too. He was at the doctor yesterday, and they can adjust it. They can make his voice sound slower, make it faster, and
Really?
give it a little more edge.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
real. It's amazing what
just
they can
fine
do.
tune it with
Yeah.
he's got a battery pack in his chest and electrodes in his brain, and
and
it's
he had
yeah.
a really bad tremor before, and it's completely gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah,
Unbelievable.
they can fix it like that. So
So it's an implant that he actually
Yeah.
that's constantly using.
Exactly.
Is it running all the time or only when he has tremors?
all the time,
On-
yeah,
all
all the
time.
time, and it makes it like Laura said, so that he absolutely has no tremor whatsoever.
It's like, you know, I think it works like noise cancellation technology, like where like if headphones, right? And it
Mom was
gives you
chewing.
they take the
Did you
amplitude.
Did you see that? Her mouth was chewing a little bit. We'll see more of her chewing, just sort of involuntarily. But yes, DBS, deep brain stimulation, is a thing. Again, it's a very expensive thing. It's few are the people that could probably afford it, but they made enough money at the time to do so.
And they give the exact one, and it and it almost cancels it out, right? So it's really amazing. I'm a total science buff, by the way. I'm a closet nerd.
Oh, really, really.
My mother wanted me to be a doctor, so.
Oh wow!
Did you ever
Wow.
study medicine then?
Oh yeah, well, I went to. I spent one day in dental school, but I have a degree in biochemistry, so I studied in college, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like it's one of those things that, like, if I'm at an airport and I'm gonna need, I'll go to believe it or not, I'll go and buy, like, Science, American Scientific, or yeah. I love that Discovery, and I watched stuff on TV. I do enjoy it. I research on the internet for whatever reason.
Yeah,
To me,
yeah.
it's like a puzzle to figure out. I think it's the
Right.
human body's an amazing thing.
And all these developments in medicine too are so interesting. And I think we follow it more closely because of my dad, but it's just crazy to see all these.
Yeah,
great
no,
things.
and I think on many levels I treated my own body like a petri dish, and then balancing out all the drugs. So I learned responsible addict. So Laura, tell me about you. Okay, so
Okay.
you're very successful, right?
Laura will be happy to tell you about herself. She's been waiting for it, and she's been falling off her seat, wanting to be discussed. She can't help it.
Right. So you have this podcast with your mom, right?
Yes.
What was the why did you first? What was the impetus to start it? I don't think it's a pretty calm. I couldn't. By the way, I could not imagine
Mom's
having a
mouth is
podcast
hanging
with
open.
Well, see, the equivalent
And she's
like
not
that.
just
Oh
mouth
my
breathing.
God, Mad Max from the movie.
Yes.
Mad Max is not easy. You know what I'm saying? You know.
Well, I feel like it could have gone either way, right?
He's tough.
I mean, who
but
knew?
what's it like working with your mom?
I mean, I think we get along really well, and that was why we decided to start the podcast in the
Some
first place. Was
Her mouth is chewing. See, this is why we're watching Mother. Laura will talk about herself. That's fine. And, you know, some of the stuff they say about their interaction is interesting. But I spend a lot of time watching Mom, just sort of her mouth just chewing away like a cow. And that's not just a reference to bovine for no reason. These are indicators. These are nonverbal indicators. And if you aren't really watching closely, you'll miss things like this that give us deeper insight into what's going on behind the scenes. And it gives us further insight into why people behave the way they do.
listen to all these podcasts on our own. We would be listening individually to podcasts, and then we would be together in the car driving all the time. And we would listen to self-help podcasts. We went to Tony Robbins together. Like, we were very interested in the self-help field. And I think my interest really was sparked by the fact that I had depression, and I was trying to hide the fact
I'm being silly.
that I had depression from my friends. And,
Right.
you know, if you were to see my social media from a few years ago, I mean, you would just think I had everything together and, you know, I was really living the life. And at that time, I was really struggling, and I was listening to these podcasts when I would be home at night. I would just be like, God, I just want to feel better.
You know,
And while Laura's talking about her depressive past, which I believe is true, there's a lot more there than just her depression. But of course, while she's talking about that, her mother is chewing away on something that doesn't exist. These are important things. These are all important things. And I wish I could do them simultaneously, but I'll be ping-ponging back and forth between my observations.
it's interesting. I think it's so true. It's I think it's problematic that people they post this sort of artificial represent. It's like, you know, like you say, when you go on your first date, you send your representative. It's not the real person.
Exactly.
Right.
And then six months later, they meet who you are, right?
Right.
Who the fuck are you?
Right.
Why you change? I didn't change it really well.
Right.
Yeah.
But on social media, like everyone's happy, everyone's smiling, every pictures are altered, right? Photoshop, whatever it might be,
It's
right?
only gotten worse.
And it's kind of screwed up because it could, you know, I think that you're almost measuring your own happiness against some artificially pumped up image of what
Right.
happiness is, right?
Right.
And it's like, even though you know that's
And
happening,
even though you know it's true, it doesn't change the
it
fact.
really
Right.
doesn't change the fact that when I would be really
Watching them,
depressed,
I get it.
I'd be on my Instagram seeing everybody else's lives, and it's hard to pull yourself away from even looking at that. And at the time, I was in a very abusive relationship, physically and emotionally abusive, and that made it even worse to see all of my friends seeming so
Apparently
happy.
happy, right?
Right.
Why do you think that is, though? I mean, like, it's because it's a good point that I think everyone knows that it's bullshit, that the representation isn't real, but yet it
Right.
still affects us.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
And, you know, I also was going to say, too, I think for my mom's generation now, it's also the same thing that, you know, your friends
Her mom is busy chewing nothing and having her mouth hang open, even where I've stopped it. She's about to say something and make some noises, so we'll give her a slight pass on that. But at the risk of belaboring the point, just keep an eye on Mother Owens and how much her jaw just sort of hangs and moves around and does unusual things. I think there's substantive evidence that she does indeed have some signs of dementia occurring. And knowing that puts a certain dynamic on their relationship, the relationship between her and Laura, and how some of the antics transpire. Now, it's also interesting to point out that the point they're making here about the appearance of people on social media is also worth discussing. And I remember an interview of Tony award-winning Broadway star Stephanie J. Block talking about this very thing, where social media is so very curated, where people, all you see is the very curated and artificial aspects of people's lives that they post, and all the rest of it is everything is messy. You capture one brilliant moment and that's what you put out there, and you just ignore that the other 95% is just absolute disaster.
Yes.
And we're in that frame of mind, right? Like, Instagram is always the pretty picture and the perfect day and the perfect outfit. And you're like, messy. I captured 1 second, and that's what we put out in the world.
The Owens family, and Laura in particular, are no different. There's a lot of attempt to curate public image of who they are and how people perceive them. And of course, as this criminal trial goes on, we'll see that even more being scrutinized. And it's my belief that It will be at either the expense of Laura and her reputation or the expense of the family that will get sacrificed in order to save Laura from totally crucifying herself in the criminal trial. But we go on to talk about some more things in this interview. Let's go to the next items in their discussion with Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street.
Are posting, oh, their kids are graduating and they're going on vacation.
Right.
And
Yeah, but you know what? I disagree with you that it's all roses and happy stuff with my generation, because my generation, I think, also is using social media, like talking about some of the challenges they're facing. I don't know how many of my friends will post like, oh, my husband got sick or my mother died.
It's hard for us to post pictures when we're looking good and happy.
Right.
I got a couple of good years left, right? She's easy for her, right? I got to go to a freaking plastic surgeon, right? So, no, but it's a good point, though.
yeah.
But I think our generation is maybe more honest about that stuff, because maybe we've been through the years of phoniness and people trying to be who they aren't, and so now they feel like, okay, I can be honest. I can say, you know what? I mean, I've had friends of mine post like, wow, you know what? We're really struggling financially right now, and it's like, wow, you? How did that happen to you? You
right.
know?
Or you do have people who will say that a family member's sick and they need prayers, and then I think it's good. And I especially find with friends my age that I really kind of admire those people who are brave enough to say that. And I think that it's gotten better.
What do you think it is, though? Like, I mean, I think it's interesting that I think most people know it's not real, but why does it think it still bothers? Why do you think we still measure ourselves against that? Because it's visuals. Like, I mean, it's almost like, like at some level, like you think like you missed, like the people will see like, oh, there was a party last night. Everyone was there.
FOMO.
You know what I mean? Right.
Fear of missing out. Yeah.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
It is really weird. And I think, it's just so easy to go to your phone when you're bored and look at that stuff. Whereas I guess maybe, when your guys' generation, you guys didn't have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not real, but you just can't help yourself from looking at it sometimes.
You know that when phones first became popular, so I had a cell phone in 1985.
Wow.
Okay, so tell me what's give me the age, in your eyes as a millennial, what is a millennial and what's not? Who's before you and who's after you?
I think it's like 1985 to 2000, I would say.
Okay.
Or people in my generation. I mean, we kind of grew up with the same things, I would say. And I think we just have a very different attitude about life. I think that, in some ways it's great and we're entrepreneurs and we're really driven. But on the other hand, I think there's also a lot of people who are fake, and
So and millennials,
And I think one of those fake people is Laura herself. There's so much to cover about her and her fakeness and the tells she gives us in her history. There's so much to cover. It's interesting that Jordan doesn't really spend much time talking about his criminal past in all of this kind of bragging about being a young entrepreneur and being wealthy and so forth. He skirts it quite a great deal, but in some ways I think Laura might be enthralled with this fraudulent lifestyle that he led. And sometimes I wonder if there might have been a little bit of a catalyst in that connection. I don't think there was anything specific between them that she sucked off of. The magnetism and fascination in the brains and just sort of the back and forth is something worth noting, I think.
could say they already are in like their second year of college, or they're already in college, right?
In college or they're out.
What would you call the people below them? How would you
I think that's Generation Z. Is that
Z, is
right?
it called?
I think it's Z. I should know. I think it's Z. Yeah.
Or is that a gender now? Generation Z? I understand the world. I'm getting fucking nervous. I go to see my parents and they're like, "What is this stuff? I don't understand."
And I saw this study today. You might be interested in this from a scientific standpoint. That young people in Australia had some
I just
sort
got
of
back
scan.
2 days ago.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah, I
I'm
was just
jealous.
there.
Well, apparently these kids are getting bone spurs in the back of their head from looking down so much at their phones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and that's so scary. I mean, how much time are they spending on these phones?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
They're even worse than millennials.
Everyone was so worried that you get brain cancer. It turns out it's bone spurs.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
They died of bone spurs. So now let me. So you're a millennial, right?
Yes.
So that's the. So give me what's the definition? Forget the not the. What do you? How would you describe a millennial?
I would say that we are, like I said, just like a really driven group who grew up kind of in the last innocent generation. So we kind of know about life before phones and life before computers. We know how to be outside, but we also know what it's like to be in the modern world with technology and using our smartphones all the time. So I think we're really the ideal generation. Sorry, you guys. I think
millennials, it's hard to make them work.
right. And it's like
I haven't found that at all.
Right. Then that small group makes it so hard for me. I feel like I have to justify I'm a millennial, but I'm a hard worker.
Is to be, they like to be tested in the sense of giving responsibility, and they think they work well like that.
But I think they also want something. They want ownership of what they're doing.
Exactly.
They want motivation to work harder. They're not
100%.
happy just living, in the same apartment they've lived in for 10 years. They want to move up. They want to buy the house. They want to own their own company.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really what I find.
Right. Yeah. But you know what? When you're talking about they want to own their own company, there's so much talk in San Francisco, especially about millennials working for startups. And the idea being that, all these millennials are working for startups. They're all making $1 million overnight. And I think that must make the ones who aren't, which
The majority.
are the majority,
In the-
feel bad.
The information was hard to come by back in the, because look at, I mean, you must know a lot of my parents' friends, they're almost, thankfully, my parents are doing well because
We don't care what he's saying. Nom, 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 nom. Mother's just chewing away. That's what she's doing. And he's just rambling on. He rambles on a lot in this. Nom, 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 nom. Yes. Yes, that's what Mother is doing. And then she's talking.
Generation, they grew up during the Depression, during World War II, and I think it was like you want a safe situation,
You want security.
right? You weren't
My parents
thinking
that way,
you weren't really thinking you needed to go out and be an entrepreneur. I mean, my dad was like, well, you get a job and you get a good job and you just stay in that
Opposite,
job,
exactly.
and you get the gold
Right.
watch and
So what do
that's
you
it.
think is different about my generation? Do you think we're grittier or have higher aspirations for ourselves, or how has it changed?
Well, I think the big aspect of is that the access to information. So in other words,
Exactly.
there's a huge difference that, like when I was growing up, all right, it was hard to be informed. You had to really try, and even when you tried, you were only being fed information from a select group of newspapers, and we trusted Walter Cronkite, and he was a
Nope. Nope. I don't care about what he's saying either. He's talking too much. Nope. Nope. Go back to Jan. We want to see her chewing on her tongue.
so polarized, and,
Right.
and it's really sad. Okay, what's happened, but what's happened is those because of the internet. And because of you having this smartphone, which makes people smarter, is that
Nope. 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 I think I'm onto something. I think I am. While he's busy talking and I'm watching watching Jan Black. Oh, this goes on for quite a bit. I think we'll skip ahead to some of the more interesting talking points they have, but I think I've made my point. It's not unusual for people of the elderly persuasion, as Jordan is busy flailing about and running his mouth. It's not unusual for elderly people to develop either early onset or just engage in the early stages of dementia and start having involuntary things like that. That is easy to research. You're welcome to research that on your own and discover more about the tells of dementia. But I believe that is one of the secrets that the Owens family is trying to hide from public, is that Mother is not all there. As I said in one of my earlier videos, I don't think she's playing with the full deck, and some of that may not necessarily be her fault. But if Laura is exploiting that for her own nefarious purposes, that doesn't help any of them, including Laura, and it certainly doesn't help the family. So let's skip ahead to some other interesting things they talk about here, and we'll talk more about those.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, going back to the mental health angle too, I'm really hoping that since there seems to be more of an open dialogue going on about mental health and it's becoming a little bit more acceptable for people to share that they have issues, then, maybe it's going to trickle down to the people who are homeless and who have issues, and people will be more understanding and there will be a better solution.
I suffered, just so you know, I suffered terribly my whole life from anxiety.
Really?
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
I never would have
Never
known.
would think so.
No.
From a very young age, from the time of
They're not very astute. They simply aren't. Probably because they're blinded by their own problems in the same realm of mental health issues within their own family.
painful. It hurt. It tortured me mentally. And I taught I used math, believe it or not, to resolve. Like I would count numbers at night and take the clock and multiply the minutes times the hours when I was to try to get my my brain wouldn't stop, right? And then finally, so tell me your. Let's talk about your depression.
Oh man, let's talk about my depression story.
I've been depressed too.
Yeah, I mean,
I think a little bit of depression is good, by the way.
I think it makes you more conscientious.
So tell me. I don't want you to, unless you're comfortable, but I'd like to hear. Tell me what really your story about it.
You know what? I am totally comfortable sharing my story because I'm hopeful it's going to help other people share their stories, and that's really what it did with my friends when I, came out about being depressed. I don't think I realized what I was really suffering from until I was in this awful relationship I told you about before, where I ended up having to get a restraining order against the guy. And I
want to know his name.
I know, right?
I think we might know the answer to that. Ooh. As if it's some sort of salacious detail, but already you can see here, and this is a good 5 years ago, we used the men as leverage in our own story, and we used them as sort of the whipping boys to further one's career as Laura Michelle Owens. This is a pattern. The pattern begins even before this period right here, some 5 or 6 years ago. But this is very interesting. At some point, she'll talk about dad's depression, and all of this ties together, folks.
Body does. Hate on him and post terrible things about the asshole.
Yeah.
So if you want to say it, say it. If not, no big deal. Yeah. We'll Google it. Anyway,
But I think that when I was with him, I started to realize, man, I feel so bad about myself. And I think I kind of came to the conclusion that if I were not depressed and if I felt really good about myself, I probably would have left the relationship. Logically, I wouldn't have stayed. And I think it made me do a lot of self-reflection and say, there's something that I think could be wrong. And I come from a history of mental illness. My dad has clinical depression and his mother was bipolar. So, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility for me to have it, although her side of the family is all clear. But,
This certainly is your...
I don't believe that mom's side of the family is all clear because I think we've got exhibits that mother has her own issues, and those can have a genetic component as well. But we don't know all the details there. We'd have to do far more in-depth research. But isn't that interesting that here we have, I think for the first time that's ever publicly announced, that Father Owens has some issues, and he got it from his mother. No, what a shock. Family systems and cycles of abuse tend to be cyclical, strangely enough. And I think Laura is a result of those cycles. And she herself is, at her age, beginning to perpetuate those cycles that are both precipitated by substantive medical and mental health issues, as well as cycles of abuse. So let's let her at least finish her thought, and then we'll go to another interesting segment.
There definitely is. And when I first met with a psychiatrist, I was kind of this mindset that, I can't possibly have anything. And, and if I do, it's not a big deal. I went to the psychiatrist kind of intimidated. And I hate to say this, but almost a little judgy of who the other patients are. Like, right. I'm not like them.
I'm not really like them.
I'm not really like them.
I'm a healthy depressed person.
Right, exactly. And I went and I was like, I don't think I'm depressed, but, I'm in this relationship and, I'm having, a lot of issues. I'm really feeling bad about myself. I'm really sad. I'm not wanting to get out of bed. I'm not really wanting to go in and do things and be social with my friends. And, a lot of that too is it's really hard to be going out with your friends when you're kind of holding this secret about this relationship that you just don't, you feel like not great being around them because they're in happy relationships and you want to be happy for them, but
yes, you think they're in happy relationships.
You think so, exactly.
And on Facebook they are.
Yeah,
on Facebook
right.
they are, and
sure
again,
look happy online. Yeah,
it's just really interesting when you get honest with your friends and your family about where you are. They get honest with you, and it's been really nice. It takes away all this surface stuff that I think is just so prevalent in our society today, all this surface happiness.
So did the psychiatrist prescribe you medication?
Yes, she did prescribe me
Which
medication. Cymbalta and Wellbutrin.
Okay.
So I was put on those two drugs, and
Wellbutrin's an older one, so Cymbalta's new.
Yes, Cymbalta.
Is it sometimes like one of those LRS, serotonin reuptake inhibitor, SSRI, right?
Right, exactly. And you know what was really frustrating for me, and I'm sure a lot of people have felt this way, is I left the doctor's office and she was saying like I wouldn't feel better for at least 6 weeks, So that
fucking pissed me. That's what always
made me so mad.
I did not like that about those drugs. I
Right.
I want the fucking pills to make me feel better.
I want it to be, right. I'm at this point. I want to feel better right now.
And I don't get that. Like, because theoretically, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like the way it works, you know how these drugs work, right? They stop the synapses from uptaking serotonin. It's a reuptake. So there's like the brain balances, right? So the theory is that when you're depressed, your serotonin levels drop, right? So there's two ways to go. You could have the brain release more serotonin, or you could block the reuptake of serotonin, right? So these work by blocking the reuptake. I'm like, why the fuck should it take 3 weeks?
Well, and you know what? And even if it doesn't work, then you have to try all these other medications.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what was just frustrating about the process for me is, I felt like I'd come to terms with the fact that maybe I had something that needed some attention, and then I just didn't get instant relief.
So did it work ultimately, the pills?
I think they ultimately did work, but I think a lot of it too had to do with, kind of like me coming to terms with the fact that my life is not what I want it to look like. This is not the relationship I want to be in. And just because I've invested time in it doesn't mean it's right. And, I think that being on the antidepressants just kind of made me have a wake up call and kind of get things together and have a little more confidence in myself.
You have side effects from it?
That's a lot to unpack there. That's a lot to unpack just with the mental health component, but also the component of her stating that she can't, she realizes her life isn't what she wants it to be. Within the midst of all this is a very detailed and substantive thing. For many people who struggle with manic depression particularly, or various forms of depression, of which there's a number of types, everything from unipolar depressions to multipolar depressions, and when you sprinkle in other seasonings, other flavors and spices of other things like personality disorders and other things on top of that, that can be a lot to deal with. And reality and perception can become blurred. That was certainly the case in my own family with my stepsister, where gaslighting and manipulation was a regular occurrence when she was cycling on and off and her medication wasn't quite right, or she wasn't taking her medication. So we could distill this entire thing with Clayton Echard, possibly, but I would say not exclusively, into the fact that Laura is not properly medicated as she should be. It's a very realistic possibility. And those who have far more experience and practice when it comes to the world of psychiatry and so on and so forth, they could certainly point us in more detailed directions. But people like that tend to avoid conversations like this. They're not supposed to be remote diagnosing. But since we're not a practitioner, we can certainly opine based upon our experiences and based upon our observations, which is what we are doing here. But I thought it was quite revealing. The family history of depression, certainly on her father's side, and certainly my belief that Mother Owens, as she's sort of flapping her lips away like a fish underwater, but there's no water in which to guzzle, I think she's got something herself. And Laura going on and on about her struggles with reality and things not aligning to how she perceives her life should be while dealing with mental health issues on top of it. It's all very insightful. It's all very insightful, and it helps us understand and form even more conclusions how we got to where we are with this young lady who's at the time of this recording, I believe, is only 29 years old, to here we are, she's about 35 and facing 7 felony counts for fraud and other things. Fraud, they could add extortion. They should have filed a case for relationship coercion and made her sign a relationship contract with. No, we're being silly. It's funny how the tables turn, isn't it? They talk about some more things. I'm not sure if it's all that interesting, so I may cut it out. We'll see how I feel about it as I go through it. But we'll carry on and we'll edit as desired.
I was a little bit tired, I would say, but I still felt more able to go out and hang out with people than I did off the drugs.
But the other thing you did too, you were very proactive. You really were looking for ways to feel better.
Well, that was the thing I was going to say about it too, is I think that, even
she felt better by vilifying the men that she ended up not liking because they weren't giving in to her every demand. That was one of the ways. And she'll go on to talk about her Oprah's list of my favorite things and gratitudes, which I think is it may be a useful practice for some people, but I find it a little bit woo-woo as well.
In my darkest times, I always wanted to feel better. And that's,
So you have like what they call a low, you had a high bottom. Some people have really low, like with depression can get really fucking dark. Like where there's depression, which you have, which is like treatable, but sometimes depression can get really like, it's just like, this, did you get to the level of hopelessness?
Yes. And I did. And I also think that, these drugs didn't cure everything for me. I mean, I want to be really upfront about that. Like it didn't. And I, still think to an extent I have treatment resistant depression.
Because in my opinion, again, and I'm not a mental health practitioner or a healthcare worker of any kind, I don't think she was fully diagnosed. And if she was diagnosed, I think they missed some things, or she didn't thoroughly complete everything. I think there's more layers to her and her mental health issues than there are layers to an onion. And the reason why things didn't work so well for her is because she wasn't able to use it quite the way she had hoped for other things. But that comes into the realm of personality disorders and some other things that that shape not only the character of the person that's before us, but also how they see the world, how they interact with it, and how they later try to manipulate things. It's all part of the cycles of disease within mental health work.
Which is frustrating.
Do you think that, so I assume the psychiatrist, if his worth is her license, she also engaged in talk therapy too, right? It wasn't just about some sort of cognitive or psychoanalysis or some sort of whatever procedure she used. It wasn't just giving you drugs and say, see you in 3 months, right?
Exactly.
Do you think that helped at all?
I do think that helped. And I think one thing that actually helped me that she didn't recommend, but I am a big fan of Oprah's, and I know Oprah is a big proponent of doing gratitude journaling. And I think that was like the one key that really helped me, and that I saw I had so many blessings that I didn't really think I had. Because when you get into being just so depressed and you feel hopeless, you're like, God, nothing's going right. And so by forcing myself twice a day to write down 3 things that were going right, it was like, okay. It's like little baby steps helped me.
And you did exercise too.
I did. Yes.
Exercise
Always been
really
that's
important.
huge, very important.
Well, I think that's Oprah. What she's tapping into there is a very, very simple but powerful self-help. Adage about like basically that you could focus on what's wrong in your life. Or you could focus on what's right in your life. And if you spend all day long focusing on the shit of life, well, you're gonna probably feel pretty shitty. If you focus on gratitude's about focusing on what's right.
Right.
Looking at, applying a positive meaning to experiences versus a negative meaning to experiences.
But I think that takes discipline, because it's really hard to want to feel grateful when you're feeling that low. I mean, did you find that as well?
Well, I find that a lot more with my in the moment state. Like, my wife and I kid around. I'm like, she's like, manage your state. I'm like, I want to be fucking pissed right now.
Exactly.
I don't want to manage. I want to feel like shit.
I want to feel awful, and I want to feel terrible at Clayton Echard and all these men who didn't give in to my overtures. These men that didn't fall in love with me the way I wanted them to. I think that was one of the many things she actually applied.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I think too, a lot of it was getting out of my own comfort zone and, just saying to myself, I want to try and help other people with this. Like, this is miserable.
I want to talk about that. So you somehow, right, which I think is awesome, by the way, you parlayed this, right? You took your pain and you turned it into this awesome thing where you and your mom teamed up, right? And you have this like top podcast out there, right? Where you guys, whether you do it to make money, just so you help people, right? So tell me, so how did that start? So, who came up with the idea for, you've been in media, right? But podcast is more of a younger generation thing. So
Right. Well, I was, as I mentioned, I was a talk show host for a while, and I loved interviewing people. I loved hearing their stories. And so I always felt, I took a break when Laura and my older daughter were little. I became a stay-at-home mom. I left the business and everything like that. When my husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, like I say, 18 years ago, I thought at some point I may need to get back into the business, because who knows how the Parkinson's is going to go. And if I do, what would I do? So I felt like what I'd really like to do is go back and do some kind of a talk show that would be helping people, really getting the good stories that people could learn from. And I envisioned probably doing that in radio. And then when Laura and I were talking over the years, she's like, Mom, my generation only listens to podcasts because then we can listen to whatever topic we want.
At any time we want, pause it whenever we want to. And, I think that was hard for her to hear and for my dad to hear too, coming from, such a big radio background that was kind of a dying.
Yeah.
I still hate to say that.
Yeah, but she's like, everybody listens to podcasts, and then she and I started to listen to podcasts.
I didn't know that. Like,
really?
But it's interesting. So from your perspective, right? So you said you decided you want to do something together. Is that how? And then,
well, we would listen to podcasts a lot because Laura was going through this difficult time in her life.
And she was literally the best person in the entire world. I was very lucky to have.
Here's your question. So it's interesting.
This is good stuff. We hear the origins of the podcast and we learn more about how they interact together. Pay attention. This is good stuff.
I mean, one of my fears for sure would be coming down with something like Parkinson's. That would scare the shit. I mean, right?
Right.
And while I know that the treatments are radically advanced compared to what used to be almost like a death sentence, right? Did that freak you? How did you handle that? Like back in, was it like back?
It was like around 2001 when my husband first had the symptoms. And
how did it start? Like all of a sudden he just started shaking?
You know what? It was weird. We were in the midst of an argument, not a serious argument, but, an argument, and his hand started to shake. And I thought, well, this wasn't, it wasn't.
He shouldn't be that upset.
It wasn't that it wasn't something that should make him shake. It was just kind of like, well, why didn't you put the cap on the toothpaste? So, it was like, it shouldn't be causing him to shake. And then.
Oh, it's that type of fight.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a biggie at all.
Right.
And then when I noticed his hand was shaking, it was like all of a sudden, instead of focusing on whatever it was we were fighting about, we looked at his hand and it was like, well, that's really weird. And he was looking at it.
Just out of nowhere,
out of nowhere. But we figured it wasn't a big deal. And
did it stop then and go into remission?
Yeah, it stopped. It stopped. It wasn't a consistent thing. It stopped but it kind of came back a little. And then he talked to another doctor, a friend of ours, who said, maybe you want to go have a neurologist check it out. It's probably nothing. And he went to the neurologist and they didn't need to do any other tests. They just looked at him and they said, it's Parkinson's.
Really?
And from the other symptoms. So he came home and we really didn't know anything at all about Parkinson's. And I think in some ways that was good because we just sort of figured, okay, we're just going to take it as it comes. And
I think we initially thought too, it's just going to be shaking.
What was there like? Was it like a heavy moment, or you talk about it now more like logically, but at the time, was it a deep emotional thing, or was it more just logic? You logicked it out.
I'll tell you what it was. I was driving down the street in our right in front of our house, and my husband was driving toward me in the opposite direction. He had just come from the doctor's appointment. And so I saw him driving toward me, and he had this look on his face that I have never seen him have before. It looked like he'd seen a ghost. And he was driving his car, and I thought, oh my God, I know he just came from the doctor. I wonder what happened. And
his own mortality stares.
Yeah, it was like, and I can picture it in my mind right now. And I know that was, he had just, left the doctor's office 10 minutes before when I saw him, and then we came home and he explained what it was. But we didn't think it was going to be a bad thing. And I have to say, one of the things that he has done is to really exercise and try and stay in great shape. He's doing boxing now because boxing is great for Parkinson's. He walks a lot. He's done yoga. He's done Pilates. He's done.
So basically keeping active and not becoming sedentary.
Right. And
it goes without saying that he isn't doing any of those things anymore. We learn from all of this, including the police reports, where we get some descriptions from the raid on the casita. We'll have a preview, not today, but we'll have a preview of the song, The Raid on the Casita. That will be exciting. But we do learn that Ronn Owens, in the progression of his disease, is such to the point where he's not very mobile anymore. He's certainly not dancing on the tables. He's not doing kickboxing. And if he even gets around the block of the cul-de-sac where they live currently in Scottsdale, that might be a major win for the day. But his progression is rather significant these days. And it's sad in some hands because there's not much that can be done. But I also think before his condition substantively lessened his mobility and his cognitive faculties, that he was less of a nice person in the house than one might otherwise believe based upon the characterizations of the family when they know they're being recorded and microphones are on and cameras are running.
And we went to the doctor with him yesterday, the neurologist, and she said, I'm going to tell you something. She said, if you hadn't done the kind of exercise that you've done, and he has kept his mind really active too, as a talk show host over the years, but she said, you would not be sitting across from me in the same condition that you are right now. It's the exercise
But there was a lot of uncertainty when he got it, because they apparently can tell how fast your Parkinson's is going to progress.
Different types, right? Yeah.
Based on how it is the first year. And we were really lucky that his has been pretty slow progressing.
Yeah.
Right.
They said it can be much worse than what he has.
Right. And Robin Williams had a different thing, because Robin
had
Williams had
Lewy
Lewy body
Yeah.
disease with his Parkinson's, which is different. But they do say, after the first year, they can tell if it goes really slow, you've got a slow progressing.
So it's on because they put on steroids and stuff like that. And what's the treatment for L-Dopa? Or is it,
levodopa, carbidopa, levodopa. He's on several medications for it.
Right.
Like 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The trick is the blood-brain barrier. That's the that's the challenge, is getting the drug through the. We all have stuff, right?
Yeah.
What I love about your story is that you used it to, you took I think there's power in failure. I think there's power in depression.
Oh my God, I completely agree with you.
Like there's power in
She used her power for evil. That's what she did. She tried to use it to further her own ambitious ends at the expense of the men she was seeing. That's Laura's parlay into this, or at least that's what it is these days. We see the origins in these conversations. We see the little bits and pieces, the trail of breadcrumbs. That seems at first, when inspecting just one crumb at a time, to be nothing of great significance. But in its totality, it leads us to 7 felonies and a criminal trial where she could be facing up to 33 years in prison.
What do you think that makes your podcast so successful?
I think what we have done that's been great is we do work really well as a team in terms of we kind of know our responsibilities. Like I do the social media stuff for us, and I work with influencers to make sure that we're getting seen by a bunch of different people.
So let's explain, because I think I have a lot of people who are entrepreneurs here.
Yeah.
So tell me about. I'd like you to tell give me your strategies. Tell me. I want you to help. I want you to help.
People want to know about podcasting.
Yes, I want you to tell everyone. I want you guys to disclose your secret of how anyone could take, whether they have one or just how do you raise your awareness? Tell me your secret.
I think the one thing we did at the start that a lot of people don't do is we started out with 30 episodes. We posted 30 at once. So it wasn't like we were going to post one podcast and never do it again.
Yeah, somebody in the business had suggested that.
It was like, wow, it's going to be a real show.
We put up a bunch of them to make it look like, hey, we're in business. We're serious about this.
I like that.
It's not
I'm going to take that advice, by the way.
No, we posted that many. So, and we had really good people. I mean, I think because I'd been in the business that I knew a little bit about who to contact, and I had a lot of everything.
By the way, it's a really, really good piece of advice for people to follow. Seriously, guys, like if you think about it, it's an extrapolation into content creation. Like, you want to create lots of content.
Exactly.
A little bit doesn't. It
does nothing.
It's too much.
And it has to be consistent.
Right. There's a consistency, and also doing a lot at once. I love that. That's a very good point. So that's the first thing, right? There's some sort of Schadenfreude, as they call it, with that. Like when, wishing someone bad. It's like, why do you think that's about? Or do you think maybe I'm wrong? It doesn't exist.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, America loves to build people up and loves to tear them down, and then, but I think we also like to see them reinvent themselves.
True.
We like a second.
Because then we can relate to them more.
Yes.
Because everybody needs that. Everybody feels that way.
I
love.
So how is Laura going to reinvent herself after a criminal trial? That's certainly a question I have. Is she going to turn that into a book deal of how she was wronged and how she really was pregnant, even though absolutely all the evidence says she's a big fat liar and a con artist? Perhaps like the rest of her family? That's not an allegation. That's just a hunch. Oh, dear me. We aren't going to look into our crystal ball. But she's going to have a very difficult time trying to resurface. But she could see some success, just as Jordan Belfort himself, the Wolf of Wall Street, reincarnated himself and is, by all accounts, done reasonably well after going through quite an ordeal, everything from mental health issues to drug use to criminal activity. We seem to like those in this country in certain aspects, everything from the White House on down. That's not a jab. It just seems to be the reality. take it for what it's worth. But we wonder what Laura's next moves will be. And I mean, maybe we need to wait and see till what happens at trial. What will she do if she sees significant time? Her attorney has some skill, but I don't know that you can just make 7 felony counts of faking pregnancies and all the things that led to the fraud of faking pregnancies. I'm not sure you can wave those away with a magic wand, and it's certainly going to make her less desirable to date.
The reinvention.
I agree, thank God, because I'm a reinvention.
Yeah, exactly.
The ultimate reinvention. But I think on some level, though, I don't know. Here's what I think. Maybe it's not that Americans, as much as the American media loves to rip people to shreds, because, on Wall Street, we had a saying, good news travels fast, bad news travels instantly. And now it travels virally. It's almost like, it's like by the way social media is constructed right now, it's like it's almost bent towards negativity. But look, okay, you gave me one great tip, guys, all right?
Okay.
Give me another. So the first thing you did right is like, listen, you have an amazing podcast. You do. You're like number one, right? It's like, that's no easy fucking task. It's a crowded marketplace. You guys are.
It's a lot easier if you throw money at building it up artificially. That's my opinion. I don't know the metrics of how they claim to be number one. I haven't been able to figure that out definitively myself. Maybe some others have. But there are ways one can buy celebrity status, even if you've never earned it. It's just how big of a check do you want to write to various publishing marketing types to artificially inflate your watch hours, your listener hours, and your podcast views. There's ways to do that, so I'm told. I don't know what they all are, but I'm told there are ways, and it's just a matter of money. And if you're Ronn Owens, making somewhere around a million a year, being one of the highest paid voices in radio in California, especially in that market, one of the highest paid of all time, if I'm not mistaken, you make a little bit of money, and maybe some of the ladies in the family siphoned it off for their ambitious ventures. Hard to say. Well, it didn't include country music at this point in time, but it certainly did in Laura's past. And again, we'll talk about that in a future episode.
Very credit. 750,000 podcasts.
You're like a silent killers, you two, right?
Yeah.
No, seriously, you wouldn't look at you like
Right, exactly.
number one in the world,
Yeah.
So what else? Tell me, come on, give me another secret. You're obviously doing, this is not an accident that you guys are successful. It never is. So what else are you doing?
I think that to start out, we just started contacting as many really interesting people as we could. And I have to tell you, like at the beginning, it was like 100 to 1. I would send out 100 emails and be like, this is who we are. And this is why we would want to have somebody on. We would make it personal. Or I did a lot of those myself. I just tried to,
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I was doing that like bam, bam, bam. And, I mean.
You're a salesperson.
Exactly.
You're a closer.
Exactly.
And by the way, it just goes to what I say, that sales is
I love sales.
Yeah, well, without.
Laura wanted to close the deal with man after man after man after man. And the only way she could seem to get any response to that was by threatening them that they were pregnant and they were the father and she was going to have the babies even if she didn't hear back from them tonight. Having the babies if I don't hear back from you tonight. I'm thinking about the letters that Schnitzel dropped earlier today and the wonderful little tunes that Megan Fox came up with in the wake of all of those letters and texts and other juicy written bits. Laura likes the written form. She likes writing emails, which is kind of curious for being a little bit younger generation. I would think she'd be more of a texter, but she likes to get verbose in written form in emails and blogs. It's very interesting to me. And we see how some of that comes about with her podcast work, how she's the one doing a lot of the legwork, much to my surprise. I would have thought maybe Mother Owens uses her contacts and her list of people through media and her associations in media, and then Laura goes and gets them to commit to show up on their show. Very interesting dynamics.
It's exciting.
So what you did is you actually had a direct sales, an outgoing telemarketing and email campaign.
Exactly.
To make sure that you got quality guests, and then you turned it into a numbers game, and then essentially what you almost did, you wore down the market. You call enough people, you catch selling,
exactly.
and then all of a sudden, then you get more credibility and more credibility, and then before you know it, you become a destination.
Contact all those men and wear them down until they give in to you. There we go. I rest my case again, Your Honor. There it is. I wonder if she says anything else interesting.
They should want to go on because you have traction, right?
And for those people who didn't want to come on in the first place, then we contact them again 2 months later, 3 months later, and then maybe they do.
So
I don't give up.
No, good, no. So
we know she doesn't give up until she gets her way. And I'll bet that's the underlying footnote of her entire life. She will badger and harass and harangue and just be an absolute terror until she gets her way. I see that. I see that then when the first part of the paternity case was happening. I certainly see it here several years ago, 5-6 years ago. Confessions. Perhaps they're Freudian confessions.
That's a resilience, tenacity, right? Those amazing traits for any salesperson or entrepreneur. So you would recommend for sure is don't, be bashful. Go out there, just ask, and go out to put a directed effort to go out and recruit guests, interesting guests, right?
And you can't be afraid of getting a negative response. Like most people just aren't going to respond at all. I mean, that's really what the reality of it is. When I would send emails out, most people didn't respond to begin with. So you have to kind of develop a thick skin with that.
Yeah, but I think you also have to target it, and I think that the more big names you get on,
then we can add
people
to our
say
list
like, oh, okay, well they went on, well it's okay,
right.
it's okay.
When people try to get me on their show, they always say, I had this guy, that guy, that guy. I'm like, whatever. I mean, so for me, it's more about like if does it fit what I'm doing.
Or Elizabeth Smart, the kidnapping.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was fascinating. Yeah.
She was fabulous, and she was talking about like one of her nobody told me things. We always ask, what's your nobody told me lesson? What is it that nobody told you in life that you had to learn on your own? And one of the things she said along those lines is that after she was kidnapped and the lesson that she had learned, one of the things was how meaningful things like sunshine and fresh air and rain were to her after she'd been kidnapped. Nobody told her those things that the rest of us take for granted,
And not to have a victim mentality. Like she could have been the kidnapping victim her entire life. But where does that get you at the end of the day?
Yeah, she said, nobody told me that it was up to me to define how I would be seen by other people. And she said, I decided I didn't want to.
After the kidnapping.
After the kidnapping. She said, I decided I didn't want to be that girl who was kidnapped for the rest of my life. I wanted to move on and help people, and she's certainly done that. But we worked through a lot of potential titles for the podcast. I mean, we had dozens of them. And finally, we settled on Nobody Told Me because it's kind of that thing like, well, I think all of us have felt that, like, God, why didn't somebody tell me that? Why didn't I know that?
What was the key to life? What hard times could I miss out on?
What could I skip over? If somebody gave me this advice, what could, hard lesson would I then not have to learn myself?
Yes, exactly.
And so we just thought Nobody Told Me is a great thing because we've always, everybody has those Nobody Told Me things. And I think we also have lessons in life that people did tell us, but we didn't really pay attention to.
By the way, so that's okay. So of course, as you're talking, I'm listening and searching my memory for I'm saying what's my and honestly, for me, it's far more. I had really good parents. It's not so much they didn't tell me things; I just didn't fucking listen.
Well, but see, here's that's what I'm saying. There are a lot of things that people tell you, but you don't pay attention to.
You got it.
And then you have to learn it on your own. And then it's like, oh God, that's right. People told me life was going to be hard, but I didn't really believe it until it knocked on my door.
But you can be told the same thing by different people, and it just doesn't register until it's with the right person. Like I might have been more likely to listen to advice from a mentor than I would have, even from you growing up. And I think that's really common for kids. Like it just takes a while for the right thing to hit. And so I think with this show, we have enough different guests saying enough different things with enough different experiences that we feel like people can really get a lot out of it.
But a lot of them say the same thing. Like I'm struck by how many people talk about their failures and say how their failures were really, they had to go through the failures to become a success.
Oh, sure.
And I know that's one of the things you were talking about on your first podcast.
Yeah, lessons are in the failures.
Right. Yeah. But you want to be the one that doesn't have the failure, that doesn't have the hard time.
Yeah.
Right. But that requires, I think, being open about the fact that, we've gone through hard times ourselves and, that really has been the catalyst. Like the catalyst for this really was the worst time of my life when, I'm looking.
Oh, girl, you ain't seen nothing yet 5 years ago. You're going through it now, and you deserve every little bit of it. And you didn't even think about it once when you were castigating your relationship at the time who you had a restraining order with against. At the time of this taping, oh, girl,
and like, I don't have a purpose, and, you know, I feel sorry for myself and I just don't know what to do with my life. And this ended up really being what, you know, I feel is my purpose. And I feel like you feel is your purpose too, is to just try and help people as much as we can to, you know, achieve their dreams and be happy. I mean, as cheesy as that sounds, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, yeah. But it was also, like I say, to have another source of income, because I didn't know what
we hit that hard.
my husband's
that would be what I would say
was going to do.
Like, okay.
So how did you?
Wait, what? It's not about just helping people. It's about having a source of income. Oh, do tell.
You monetize with advertising, right?
Yes. And, you know, yes, it's definitely something we love doing, and we definitely want to help people. But we started out saying this is going to be a business. Like that's what we do. She's
So you
always
treat it like a business.
treat it like a business.
It's not a hobby.
Sales, marketing, content creation.
Exactly.
It was a deliberate thing.
Exactly. And like I said, we have our roles. So, you know, with social media, I create a little graphic for everybody's nobody told me lesson, and I have their picture and I make their nobody told me lesson, and I have fun doing it. It takes
What's that? She knows how to do arts and crafts with people's pictures and their information. Oh, tell us more. Do tell.
Takes me a while to like pick the right one, but then we put that out with the podcast. We put the picture out with the podcast, and then we are able to promote that picture on Instagram, Facebook advertising, you know, whatever we want to do, we do that. And then on days when we don't post the podcast, we post positive quotes and, you know, other people's nobody told me lessons or quotes from the show. And then we promote that. In addition to that, like I said, we've had advertisers. We have, you know, reached out to people. I mean,
Did you court advertisers? Now, do you do the podcast and manage it on your own, or do you have a company that you go through?
So we record the podcast and do all the editing ourselves, but Megaphone is the host of our podcast, and so they have the ability to insert ads where we don't have ads, and so we get paid by that. So they usually have our pre-roll spot. And I decide where else they can go.
And then we also do some endorsements too. You know, we get approached by advertisers,
right?
And
then
who want us to do.
I've
live
also,
stuff.
you know, done a
Who's
couple.
your best advertiser? Who do you think?
Oh, we've had a lot of great ones. I don't know. I don't want to pick one. I don't want to pick one.
Can't pick favorites, but we have fun doing the live reads together.
Right, we love that.
How about this? Who's your favorite ex-advertiser that no longer advertises with you? Like what you had fun from the beginning? In the beginning, was there one that was like sort of a linchpin that really made? Wow, we got this person that's like.
I think I liked Bombas socks.
I liked Bombas
They
socks,
sent us
too.
a ton of socks, and
And they were
socks.
great socks.
Great
yeah.
socks. We love them.
Yeah.
Bombas, go with us again, maybe.
I think you should buy.
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe not, knowing that there's an indicted felon involved these days. That yeah. Okay.
Let me ask you one more thing. In terms of one more business question here. In terms of sustainability, right? Do you actively, like in business, in some level, unless you're always reinventing yourself and trying to make yourself obsolete, do you guys always think like, what's next? What's our next move? What, like, how am I making this better? How am I improving this? How do I make it even more exciting? What's, you know, like, not that you're trying to like, you know, reinvent yourself as much as like you're this never ending improvement, and that you're always striving. What's the next big thing we can do to take it to the next? Do you have that attitude or?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's almost been a downfall for both of us, is that we both just always are thinking ahead and who can we have next? And, you know, what angle can we bring to the show? We're constantly talking about that.
What man can we scam next? How do I get him to fall in love with me? If he doesn't fall in love with me, can I pretend I'm pregnant? And if he doesn't buy into my pregnancy, can I show him pregnancy tests? And if he doesn't believe the pregnancy tests, can I show him sonograms I've falsified and found on the internet? And if he doesn't believe the sonograms, will he believe video of my dad touching my sister's belly, allegedly? What will it take? See, these are the insights we're looking for, folks. These are the little nuggets of wisdom and patterns of behavior that tell us more about who she is and how she came to be. These are the things we're looking for with everything we look at these days as we go back in the time machine, and we evaluate and we examine and we take closer looks at things that on their own, as you look at them rather individually, may be somewhat meaningless and lackluster. But looking retrospectively gives us a great deal of information into how this person was created and formed into be the indicted felon that we know now. There's a lot to glean from these sorts of interviews and the responses. Some of them are more insightful than others, but some of them are almost bombshells.
So
24/7, and
24/7,
we'd like to do a TED Talk.
Yeah, we're in talks to
We'd
do
like
a TED.
Oh, TED Talk. Well, they were scheming TED Talks already. Isn't that amazing? And this is some 5 years ago. Very calculating. Calculating, but not to the point of, when being caught, that she had a plan to continue to scam Clayton Echard. I think a lot of Laura's progression was she would try something. It didn't give her the results she was looking for. She found herself cornered, and she would look for a way out of that corner. Testing didn't work. We need to show other kinds of sonography. We need to show videos. That doesn't work. Oh, I've lost the babies because something happened. You stressed me out. She shows a progression. She shows a progression of thought that suggests she wasn't so calculated to have had an entire plan, but she's reacting in the moment. She was hoping that with every piece of her crimes, that she would get a result that she was looking for. And when that didn't happen, she would find an escape route that seemed at least plausible. But as that pile kept growing higher and higher of actions that didn't work, it led her deeper and deeper into criminal territory that she couldn't dig herself out of. Although it was certainly her hope that in the paternity matter that it would just go away when there was no more babies to be had, rather miraculously, but for which there was no evidence of their existence and there was no evidence of their demise. These are elements of very deliberate strategy, but strategy that is not so premeditated to the point where an entire plan was preconceived. The plan had to adapt, as things didn't work the way she expected them to, and she had to keep upping the ante. Such to the point where that pile of evidence became criminal and kept building upon itself. And she had hoped that in over the time, and that when things weren't going to work out her way, that it could just be waved away by saying, well, I had a miscarriage, so there's nothing further to, nothing to litigate here. All right, goodbye, everybody. Oh, no, young lady. That's not how things happen, especially when you get beyond neck deep in the waters of legalities.
Talk and a book and maybe turn it into a TV show.
You guys ever fight?
Oh, ambitions, TED Talks, books, TV shows. We had our sights set high. Very ambitious to want to do all these things. And oh dear, she got interrupted by being a criminal. How unfortunate for her.
I think it's gotten better as I've gotten older. It was early 20s.
My dad and I fought like crazy.
Yeah.
My father's like, he's Mad Max, right? I love my dad to death. He's but
I wish he wouldn't step on them all the time, because some of the things Laura's about to say, I think would have been even more revealing. But then this blowhard, this narcissist, the Wolf of Wall Street, the blowhard himself, he just can't help but talk about himself and just jump in all the time, where she's about to tell us more. I think she, at this point in time, because she hadn't been found out, that she could have bore her soul. She could have confessed to every little thing that happened then if it wasn't for him derailing everything all the time just to talk about himself. It's kind of frustrating. But as we've learned, things progressed, and we found out a lot about what she was up to since then. So, despite that, we don't get all of the low-hanging fruit. Perhaps it's not so low-hanging now. Oh, we get it eventually. It just takes a little bit longer. That's the way it is. That's the way some of these things unfold in real life. But for the insights we do get from things like this, we're grateful. They help us form even more the origins of Femme Fetal, indicted felon Laura Michelle Owens.
That I'm already really interested in how they got through their tough times, and that helps me, and I can listen back to their shows and be like, oh yeah, that's what Hal Elrod did, or that's what whoever, I can like look for a podcast, and it tends to go with my mood.
It's done the same for me.
Yeah, I think it has. I think like I've been, regardless of the success of the podcast, I think it still would have made me a happier person just having done it. Like it was about, we wanted to make a business, but we really at the core have wanted to help people first.
Right. But it's helped me, like I say, with my husband.
Who said Elrod?
Hal Elrod.
Who's that?
Hal Elrod is a guy who wrote a book about miracles.
I thought you said Elron.
Oh, like L. Ron Hubbard?
Oh no!
I was like, wait, we need another hour.
Hang on.
I got some Scientologists. I'm like, all right.
Let's go. Tell me about seat work. I want to know all about.
Right.
I was about to go. Oh boy! I mean,
Oh my God.
turn out the fucking lights.
Oh my God.
You're going nowhere.
I'm pretty sure I've seen every single documentary on
Oh my
Scientology.
God.
We
No,
both
no,
have, but no, it didn't grab us.
So there we have the interview with Jan Black, Mother Owens, Elizabeth Naylor, and daughter Laura Owens, indicted felon, with Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. Hopefully you found that somewhat interesting. It was very revealing to me watching that whole thing, and I'm going to include the link to the entirety of that for those of you who can't stand my interjecting and chopping it all to bits to make some points. We'll include that in the show notes, so you can go enjoy that on your own. We'll include anything that we talk about here that's available publicly in the show notes just for your reference. It's the only reasonable and fair thing to do, of course. But hopefully you noticed some of the things I was pointing out there. I think it's very indicative, although it's not the only indicator, but I think it is certainly an indication. All of the mouth movements, the mouth hanging open when not vocalizing that Jan Black exhibited, I think it is indicative of signs of dementia. I think that is a key player here that shows some of the power dynamics between Laura and her parents. Her sister's not so involved these days in the immediate struggles and the immediate problems because she's living her own life, has her own family, and certainly has her own things to worry about. But she certainly has a role in the earlier history of this, and we'll cover some of those things in other episodes coming up. But I also found it interesting, the origin stories of the podcast, some of the other history of the family of Ronn and his struggles with not only mental health, but also Parkinson's, some of the things he went through, assuming all of that can be believable. And for the most part, I think a lot of that is truthful and genuine. I've done some research to sort of confirm some of the things they were saying about surgeries and that kind of thing, just to verify that we aren't getting a snow job, even in this sort of setting. Again, I think this is a family that very carefully curates their appearance, and when they let their hair down, I think they reveal a little bit more than maybe they would otherwise do if it wasn't someone they were comfortable sharing with. And strangely enough, the person they're comfortable sharing some of those things with happens to be someone with his own criminal past, one of great substance, and one that was turned into, if I'm not mistaken, a book and a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. So perhaps the family sees Laura's indictments as just being, well, it's another step, and after you get over it, we can reap in the benefits with a movie deal and some other things that'll really catapult you to great heights as a star. I think that's what Laura was after. I think that's what she was after in her young life. After one gets over being obsessed with horses as a child, we have to find things to do that make some sort of career. And it's not surprising that with two parents that were, at least one of them was a major frontrunner and the golden goose of KGO radio, as an example, that an expectation to perform on some level would be fairly high. So it's no surprise that Laura dabbled in country music, which she was really not successful at. And we'll talk about that when we talk about Laura's music in a future episode as well. And we'll also talk about the other family dynamics, including her sister, in later episodes too. So there's much more to come. And because I am determined, I'm absolutely determined to get this particular episode in the can and watch Lauren 90 and have some fun in the chat there, I think we'll call this one good enough there. Again, thanks for joining us. Thanks to all you new participants and subscribers. Feel free to leave us a like and a subscribe for all you who have not yet subscribed. Hit those buttons. To quote Megan Fox, your fingers aren't broken. Clickety click. Have at it. We'll bring more to you as we have more to produce. Yes, there's much more to come, and we're grateful that you could join us on this day, and we hope you return to the Cubbyhole, your favorite place on the internet, next time. Until then.
Why do we have to, every time Rachel says something, you're just like, oh, you're not listening. It's just I don't get it. She is listening. She's listening to every word you say, and she's presenting something, and then you come back and shake your head and sigh.
Okay. Anyway.
Submit to an interview.
Wow. Stop. Well, if you let me. We're moving on to the next question. We're not gonna get very far with that. So
they can prove that this is not the first time she's done it. But even if you disagree with me,
I felt like I was juggling a flaming chainsaw while having my leg bitten by a German Shepherd. Okay. right, we're moving on to the next question.
What lawyer ever says that?
Well, you're welcome that I gave you that's such an easy way to roast me.
Allegations, you know it's a possibility you might not win something. We're talking about the
There's
appeal.
no chance you lost this appeal.
Yeah.
And you will have this.
Rachel,
ever.
can I offer you like a cookie or something? What do you want me to say? What do you want me to
Not
say?
that. In our case, we like our case.
I shouldn't have said that. Can we move on? Okay.
Yeah.
Pull it up. These statutes were invoked.
Yeah. Okay. Hang on. You're getting. Okay.
But show me a case that says that, because your cases don't. I've read them all now. Just give me a quote from Holgate. Just give me a quote from Holgate.
Can you hang on? Can you hang on for just a second here? Okay. Lord. Okay. You are pretending. Wait. If you want me to stay on this, you need to let me have fair opportunity to answer. Okay.
David, of 58 minutes, you've probably talked for 42 of them. I mean, come on, man.
Okay, guys.
Hold on.
Let me.
I got the
Rachel.
case there.
Oh,
There's
God.
only the Rule 11. Hold on. There's other authority. What was at issue in that case?
We got to move on. We got to move on from that.
So, is the whole point? Try to withdraw it. There were other issues before the court.
Oh, for God's sake. Okay, Steve, can we move on? Because we're not going to get.
And then you come back and shake your head and sigh.
I know,
Because
but
I don't have any authority infringed his copy or whatever that I interfered with his.
way before my time, way before I was there.
Way before you there. Where are these children?
Okay, you ready?
Where are they, David? This is the one thing that I think everybody wants to know.
Okay.
She's still 6 months pregnant. Can I show my belly? How would she have a belly in November if she miscarried in July or August?
Look.
It's still not appropriate for her to include that finding of fact. Where are the people? There were reasons that her findings would have been inadmissible.
My Lord. Steve. Oh my God.
And then Rachel gets 5 to 10 seconds before you sigh.
Read the emails with Clayton, the emails with Greg, the text messages with Mike, 5 that it is, but something that purports to be.
Whatever.
If you would have won, I mean, obviously, if you would have won, you would have gloated too.
Here, sign something saying that you raped me, that Laura was pregnant. I don't know what that would be. I mean, she's been running around subpoenaing things, apparently.